Here we go, part 4.
That
And when you say they would say a lot of threats, who were those threats directed at?
us, the police, sometimes even people in the crowd.
Do you have any idea why the people out on the street would make any threats to your group?
I have no idea.
Did you ever see anyone actually injured as a result of any of this violence that you talked about?
No.
Did you see anyone shoot at anyone else?
No.
Did you ever consider using your gun to shoot at anyone?
No.
Was there a time in which you and the other members of...
Hopefully the defense is writing down, is the reason you didn't consider using your gun is because you felt that you or other people were not in immediate jeopardy? Is that why you didn't use your gun? Hopefully he's writing that down.
of your group observed people on the lot to the north of that location, which is marked on that map as St. James Trainer and point at that St. James. Right?
Yes.
Yes, 59. Now, in this map, which is a printout from a satellite, there's a structure there next to St. James Church. Was that structure standing on the night of August 25th, 2020?
No.
What was the condition of that lot?
A bunch of rubble and concrete blocks.
Now, I asked you about whether you saw folks on that lot, and I believe you said you did. Is that right?
Yes.
What did you observe about those people?
They were obviously hiding. It was pitch black outside. We couldn't see anything besides a lot of shadows hiding behind the rocks.
What action, if any, did you and the other members of your group take as a result of seeing those people hiding?
We all started yelling, telling them to stop hiding and to go away.
Did you take any physical action with your gun towards them?
We were ready in case they did have guns.
And when you say you were ready, what exactly did you do with your gun?
We had aimed them
You would point your gun at those people?
in the direction.
Did the defendant do that?
I'm unaware.
You didn't see the defendant point his gun at those people?
No, I was looking at the construction site.
And you said you saw people hiding and you didn't know whether they had guns or not?
Not until the very end.
What did you see in the very end?
As soon as they did come from hiding, they started running, and I noticed one of the people did have a gun.
What type of gun?
It looks like a similar weapon to the one me and Kyle had.
When you say you saw them running, where were they running?
They were running, I want to say west towards the lake across Sheridan.
And you said it was dark. You said you eventually saw them with a gun. When they were in that lot north of you, did you see anyone point a gun at you?
No.
Did you see anyone with a gun at that particular moment?
No.
Now you notice how he said this prosecution is really asking him a bunch of questions that he would have no reason to know. So the defense should ask questions. Do you know how many people were arrested that night with guns? Do you know how many cops reported that they saw people with guns? Do you know how many people the prosecution has prosecuted for them having guns out there threatening people that night? I'd muddy the water with that if I was the defense. Again, he's making it seem like Kyle's the only one that did anything wrong. Everyone else was just nice.
Did anyone fire any shots?
No.
And I believe you said earlier...
You mean other than the police shooting rubber bullets and tear gas and running people over with trucks?
During this entire evening, you stayed up on the roof the whole time.
Yes.
Did you ever get down and wander off that 59th Street lot to go anywhere else?
No.
This is where he's trying to plant the seed that Kyle got off the roof, therefore he must have been looking for trouble.
We have heard in this case, after the fact, that there were some individuals out on the street that night whose names are Anthony Huber, Joseph Rosenbaum, Gage Grosskreutz. I assume as you sit here today, you're familiar with those names.
Yes.
On that particular night, had you ever met any of those people before?
No.
Did you know any of their names?
No.
Have you since seen photographs of those people so you know what they look like?
Yes.
Thinking back to that night, did you see any of them?
No.
Do you have any memory of seeing Joseph Rosenbaum that night?
No.
Do you have any memory of seeing Anthony Huber that night?
No.
Do you have any memory of seeing Gage Grosskreutz that night?
No.
Now,
That was a point. I'm not sure why. It'll come out later, I'm sure, but I'm not sure why he wanted to make that point. Is it because he was on the roof? Is it because why did Kyle confront these guys? Why didn't I'm not sure what the point is on that one.
I asked you a little bit about what you observed of the crowd on the street in front of this location. Where was the defendant when that crowd was going by? Do you know?
Around the Ultimate gas station.
Was there a time in which the defendant was at 59th Street when there were protesters out in front of that location?
59th Street.
Your car source location?
I want to say previously right before.
Right before what?
Right before they got to us.
Okay. What, if anything, did you observe the defendant doing during that time?
I noticed that as soon as they did get to us, there was somebody that was hurt, and he went and helped them and brought them back into the building. And then as soon as they were all bandaged up, he brought them out.
Do you know what sort of injury they had suffered?
I do not.
And when
So if he was giving aid because people were injured, earlier when I asked you, do you know if anybody was hurt? There were people hurt, obviously, because they were getting medical aid.
You say you saw them go into the building. Did you actually see with your own eyes them enter the building?
Yes.
And the supplies that the defendant had in his medic bag or something, did those all come from your residence?
Yes.
Now, there came a time in which the defendant was involved in some shootings that night, and we know that. What I want to ask is, what do you remember about that time period that we now know was the time of the shootings?
I remember that one of us had received information that one of the car source dealerships was being vandalized, or people were trying to burn it down. Kyle was not able to make it back to us, our location, so either me or Nick called him and told him about what was happening, and then the last I saw of him was him running towards that direction, and then from then on I just heard gunshots.
Now, you said you heard some information about the 63rd Street car source. Where did that information come from?
I'm unaware of that.
And you said somebody received that information. Do you recall if that was you personally who received that information?
I don't exactly know if it was me or Nick.
I hope the defense wrote down, why wasn't Kyle, you said Kyle wasn't able to make it back to you. Why?
And you said somebody contacted the defendant. Was that over the phone?
Yes.
Do you recall who that was?
I do not.
You've given a statement about this night already to the police, is that right?
Yes.
And you and I have talked previously with your attorney, Mr. Cotton, who's in the second row with the purple tie, about this situation, right?
Yes.
At no point did you mention to the police that you were the one who called the defendant, is that correct?
Yes.
And at no point have you mentioned in our meetings that you were the one who called the defendant, is that correct?
Yes.
You said you saw the defendant heading down and then you heard some gunshots. What is the next thing you remember about the defendant after that?
I didn't believe the gunshots were actually his until I got a phone call, and I answered it, and he just said, I shot somebody, and then hung up right away.
When did you see him next after that?
I want to say just a few minutes right after that.
Was that back at 59th Street?
Yeah, that was at the original location.
What observations, if any, did you make about the defendant when you saw him?
He was freaking out. He was really scared. He was pale, sweating a lot. You can tell he was just scared.
Did he say anything?
He wasn't really talking. He just said he had to do it. It was self-defense. People were trying to hurt him.
Man, that's a huge statement. I'd make him repeat that. You got him on a stand saying that, I'd have wrote that down, and I'm going to ask that same question, have him repeat that probably twice when I cross him.
Did he ever say to you that someone was trying to attack him with a gun?
No.
Did he ever say to you that someone was trying to attack him with a knife?
No.
I already said he wasn't talking much. You can ask me see, the defense ought to be objecting. Your Honor, he's asked and answered. He already asked him what he said, and he testified that he wasn't talking. Now the prosecution is asking all these questions. We already know the answer.
Did they ever say to you that anyone was trying to attack him with any sort of weapon?
No.
What happened after that?
After that, we kind of all tried to calm him down. There were some people yelling, but we kind of made the idea that he should turn himself in, but we couldn't do it in the one in Kenosha because there was people rioting at the front doors. So I took him home, and then we decided he should go turn himself in at the nearest police department.
When you say you took him home, did that mean you drove back down to Antioch?
Yes.
When you got down there, was anyone else at the defendant's residence?
No.
How long was it before anyone came back?
I want to say 5 to 10 minutes.
And who all came back at that point?
The rest of his family.
And that would be his mother and his two sisters?
Yes.
Was there any discussion at that time about what the defendant should do?
Leave. Get out of town.
To where?
One of their family's properties in either Michigan or West Virginia.
What was your reaction to that?
Said no, he should turn himself in.
Were you urging the defendant to not flee, but instead to go turn himself in?
Yes.
Did he follow your advice?
Yes.
A couple more things, Mr. Black. Do you know what the defendant's occupation was around the time of August of 2020?
A lifeguard at the Rexplex.
We've seen some videos. I'll represent to you that at various points.
17-year-old lifeguard working, going out volunteering to clean up graffiti, giving free medical aid. And this is what government, Poindexter here, wants to take away his whole life. This is the kind of people that we need to get off the streets to keep you people safe. This is why government is so good with power. Wow.
On that evening, the defendant tells people that he is an EMT. Do you know anything about that?
I know he has some training in that type of field, but that's kind of the most of my knowledge.
Do you know whether he had ever worked as a paramedic?
No.
Do you know whether he'd ever worked as an EMT?
No.
Now, you have talked about the fact that there was an understanding between you and the defendant that because he was 17 years old, he could not legally possess a firearm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Possess or own? I would have objected. I thought he said earlier, Your Honor, objection. Misstates the evidence. I thought earlier he said he can't purchase a gun. Now he's saying he can't possess a gun. Which one is it?
The jury has been told, I'll represent to you, that there's a charge against the defendant in this case for possession of a weapon by someone under the age of 18. As the person who provided the gun to the defendant, which was used to kill other people, are you facing criminal charges?
Yes.
In fact, have I not personally drafted a criminal complaint against you, charging you with 2 felony counts of providing that gun to the defendant, which were used to kill 2 separate people? Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is a case, a criminal case, that I'm prosecuting that is still pending. Is that right?
Yes.
As a criminal defendant in that case, are you aware of the fact that you have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and not answer any questions about any of that?
Yes.
Who thinks any lawyer would let their client facing 2 felony convictions or 2 felony charges get up on a stand and testify unless there was a side deal? I mean, that's just absurd that somebody thinks this kid is testifying and incriminating himself on the advice of counsel because he has counsel and there hasn't been a deal made. That's just crazy.
Have you decided today to come in front of this jury and tell us the truth about everything?
Yes.
Despite your Fifth Amendment right?
Yes.
Have I made any promises to you about what might happen in your criminal case in exchange for your...
Let me tell you how that goes. As a cop, I'm not supposed to make promises. But if I can promise, hey, I've talked to the DA. Said he can't promise anything, but if you help us out, I think it's going to help you. If you help us out, I'm pretty sure you're probably only going to misdemeanor. If you help us out, I'm pretty sure I can convince the DA to do this. This is how government plays the game of not promising so they don't have to get up in court in front of the jury and say we're cutting some deal, but we still cut the deal, people. I mean, that's just crazy that someone would think this kid's facing 2 felony charges and his attorney said, yeah, that's a good idea. Get up on the stand and testify against yourself and give them all the incriminating statements that they're going to be able to use against you later. I want you to do that. I'm your attorney. What the hell?
Testimony today?
No.
You have an attorney here, Mr. Cotton, who is your attorney in that case. Is that right?
Yes.
If you ask me, his attorney kind of sucks letting him to get up there. Unless there was a deal. And defendants and prosecutors, when they talk off the record, they can make all kind of promises and say, off the record, if your client does A, I will do B. But I can't put it in writing and we can't make it official until your client does A.
I want to confer, see if there's anything else I want to cover. Just a couple more things, Mr. Black, that you said freaking out when he came back from the shootings that night. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you see any injuries on him?
There were some red marks on his head, but besides that, no.
Did he say anything to you about any injuries that he suffered?
Just that his head hurt.
Finally, at one point in the evening, there's some indication on some videos that there might have been some folks behind the 59th Street car source, maybe throwing some rocks or something like that. Do you remember anything about that?
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Out of nowhere, there's like people behind us in the neighborhood throwing rocks at us on top of the roof.
What, if anything, did you do about that?
I tried to dodge them.
You had a gun, correct?
Yes.
Did you think about using that to defend yourself?
No.
Why not?
So they're just rocks. I mean, they're throwing them from a distance, so I didn't really feel like I was in like great bodily harm or being hurt.
Do you remember if the defendant said or did anything in reaction to those folks?
No.
I have nothing further.
No,
Thank
he
you.
didn't, or no, I don't remember.
No, he didn't.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Cross-examine?
Okay, here's the second. Let's see how this guy gets on him.
You knew Kyle Rittenhouse through his sister, Mackenzie.
Yes.
And when you were 18, 19, you were dating Mackenzie.
Yes.
And you and Kyle were good friends.
Yes.
And you refer to each other as brothers.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, good friends and brothers.
And you talked about Kyle taking the gun out of your father's basement without permission. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so up until that point,
I wouldn't have worded it that way without permission because nobody said it was without permission. He just implied it was without permission because he didn't ask anybody.
according to your testimony, you knew nothing about Kyle taking the gun down to car source that night.
No, I was definitely aware of it. Kind of never really went into that inside my mind. It never really clicked that, you know, like, hey, he shouldn't have that.
No, what I'm getting at is, whether it clicked at that point or not, it's your testimony to these 20 people from Kenosha County that you didn't know about it until he brought it up from the basement on August 25th.
Oh, yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Then, can you tell me why earlier in the date, you guys did go to Jelensky's, correct?
Yes.
You drove to Jelensky's,
Well, this was after he had brought the gun up.
That's not what your testimony was on direct examination.
That's how it went.
Okay, so he brings the gun up, you go to Jelensky's, and then go right downtown. That's what your testimony is on cross-examination.
Yes.
Okay. Whose idea was it to go to Jelensky's?
I don't recall.
But you said Kyle went into Jelensky's alone.
Yes.
And you don't know why he was going into Jelensky's?
I knew why he was going in there.
Okay, why?
To get a sling.
Okay, and then out of the goodness of his heart, he bought you one?
The plan was for both of us to get one.
Okay, so you knew he was going there to get slings, correct?
Yes.
You didn't tell him not to bring the gun, correct?
No.
Now, Kyle Rittenhouse's gun, your gun.
Look at this guy grabbing his camera. He's got a gun! Let me get a picture! He's got a gun!
Correct?
Legally, yes.
And this is an optic on the top of that gun, correct?
Yes.
This optic, does it shoot a laser beam out of it?
Not out of it. I mean, it projects one inside of it, yes.
Right, but if I were to point this gun, and obviously I can't do it here in a courtroom, but if I were to point this gun at you from here, there would be no red or green dot on your chest.
No.
This is the optic from Kyle Rittenhouse's gun. Do you need to see it?
No.
You agree that this is?
Yes.
This does not project a laser dot on you either, correct?
No.
He could explain that a little bit better. It looks like a laser when you look through it, and it lights up the glass, but there's nothing that's projected out from that. It's not a laser. I would have made that a little bit more clear for the jury. This guy is kind of pretty much attacking him and kind of trying to get on him a little quick, but you want to make sure the jury understands your point. He's making the points, and he's thinking, oh yeah, I got you, but you got to make sure the jury gets the point.
So if someone said Kyle Rittenhouse put a laser from his weapon on their chest, that's impossible, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he kind of made the point. Good. That's kind of what I wondered. I think I brought that up earlier.
Now, we have pending against you, correct?
Yes.
And those charges are a result of you providing the gun to my client.
Yes.
And each of those is punishable by 6 years in Wisconsin State Prison, correct?
Yes.
And you're testifying.
So he's facing 12 years, and he's testifying. Wow. And his attorney said it's a good idea. Yeah, who thinks they don't have a deal?
Here today, hoping that Mr. Binger will give you consideration on those charges and not send you to prison, correct?
Yes.
And you just...
Well, to be precise, Mr. Binger can't send him to prison. Mr. Binger can prosecute him, and a judge could send him to prison if he's found guilty.
Mr. Binger can make a recommendation of prison.
True. And yes.
Mr. Binger can make a recommendation of prison, correct?
Yes.
And you're hoping that by you testifying, he doesn't make a recommendation of prison, correct?
Yes.
Probation.
There's no really assuming what I get out of this.
There haven't been any promises made. I'm asking you what you're hoping.
I'm hoping for whatever the best is I get. I don't know what it is.
Okay. Your attorney, Mr. Cotton, he's met with you and Mr. Binger and the detectives?
Yes.
When's the last time you guys met?
I want to say a few days before this date.
You didn't meet today?
Oh, I mean, yeah, we did meet today.
When's the last time before today? Last week sometime?
Yeah.
Okay. You're aware that I asked your attorney if you'd be willing to meet with me, correct?
No.
No?
Ooh. He wanted to meet with him, and his attorney didn't even counsel him, not even let him decide. I don't know if there's an issue with that. The attorney can probably just say, I don't care what he wants. He's not meeting with you. So there's no reason to tell him. But it does kind of imply that he wouldn't meet with him. I think he should have stayed on that. You didn't know that I went to your attorney and asked him to meet with you? No, I did not know that. If you had known that, would you have met with me? Yes. Oh man, that would have been huge. I think he missed it on that one.
On August 26th of 2020, you were at the Antioch Police Department when Kyle turned himself in.
Now remember, I have this on speed time and a half, so these jerking and movements and things, and I'm saying he's a little excited, is probably being exaggerated. You can put your play speed and slow this down.
Correct?
Yes.
And you were interviewed in the early morning hours of August 26th by Detective Antaramian.
Yes.
And he's the individual who's the second from closest to the jury, correct?
Yes.
You met with him for a little over an hour?
Yeah, it was well over an hour.
And that was when everything was fresh in your memory, correct?
Somewhat. I was very tired.
But it's
Yeah, it was
much nearer in time than it is today, correct?
Yes.
And you...
That's a very common thing in court. They'll always try to, if they get you changing your story and the story you testify to helps the other guy, they'll always say, when the incident happened and it was more closer to it happening, don't you think that would be a better recollection than weeks later and suddenly now you see it differently? That's the point that you always want to kind of discredit if the new information hurts you.
Told him on that date, it was audio and videotape, what you remember, correct?
Yes.
Talking to Detective Antaramium and telling him whose idea it was to go to Car Source to protect the property?
Yes.
Was it, I'm going to give you three choices, yours, Kyle's, or Nick Smith's?
Nick Smith's.
When you got to Car Source...
So because they have an interview and on a discovery, the prosecution has to give this to you. When he's on a stand and he changes any of this, this is what you want to catch and kind of catch him in a lie and kind of discredit him a little bit.
After you'd stopped at Jelinski's, you meet with Nick Smith?
Yes.
And you knew that Nick had worked at Car Source?
Yeah.
And he introduced you guys to Sam and to his brother?
I wouldn't say introduced. We had met Sam previously that day, but his brother we had not met. When Sam, I don't remember if it was Sam or his brother, had given us a ride, me, Kyle, and Nick, to the location that would be more north, and that's where we met up with a lot of people that we really didn't know.
Okay, that would be Car Source at 63rd and Sheridan.
The one right down here.
Right here?
Yes.
Sheridan, depicted in the photo.
The far right?
Far left, right point, I'm sorry.
The co-owner of Car Source?
So is that Sam or is that his brother?
I believe that's his brother.
Okay, where are you in this picture?
The far right.
The far right?
Yes.
Who's standing next to you?
Kyle?
And what's in front of Kyle's feet?
First aid box?
Okay, that's a first aid box that is different from his first aid pack that he wears on his side, correct?
Yes.
Where is Nick Smith in this photograph?
He has two people to the left of Kyle wearing the white hat.
Okay, so he's got a white hat with a cross on it? Yes?
Yes.
Now, you know the owner, you know Nick, and you know Kyle. Everybody else in that photograph, had you ever seen them before that day?
No.
Did you have any plan of ever meeting up with those individuals to help protect Car Source?
No.
They just came along when you were at Car Source and offered their services to help, correct?
Yes.
Does the name Ryan Balch mean anything to you?
Yes, it's somewhat clear.
Okay. And who is Ryan Balch today to you?
I never really got to meet him a whole lot. He's one of the people that showed up randomly or unexpectedly.
And you talk about you wanting to be on the roof, correct?
Yes.
You told Nick Smith you wanted Kyle to be on the roof, correct?
Yes.
And Nick Smith said, no, we wanted Kyle on the ground.
Yes.
Because he's a medic and he can provide services, correct?
Yes.
You saw Kyle fix somebody's hand who had a big gash in it.
Yes.
You saw him give aid to a woman who had been shot by a gas ball.
I'm unaware of that.
Okay. You saw Kyle going out with other individuals in that picture, Exhibit 30, and put out some fires, correct?
Yes.
And did you see anybody that evening starting any fires?
Plenty of people.
Plenty of people starting fires?
Yes.
Did you see the individuals who took the trailer from the lot of rubble, put it out in the street, and started on fire?
I did not see that.
You didn't watch that?
No.
You weren't paying attention?
I don't know if I don't remember or if I missed it.
Okay. What about the porta potty?
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. Describe that.
People were tipping over a porta potty and lighting it on fire.
Okay. And you can't, as you sit here today, say who did that, but you know what happened.
Yes.
Okay. And you don't know what Mr. Rosenbaum did or didn't do because you weren't paying attention to him.
Yes.
You don't know whether Mr. Rosenbaum, let me ask it this way, simpler. You know of nothing that happened down at the 63rd Street and Sheridan Road Car Source.
No.
Couldn't see it.
No.
Even though you're on the roof.
Yep.
Now, I'll answer it this way. Kyle's phone records have you calling him and sending him down to Car Source 3. You don't dispute that, do you?
I don't remember it.
I'm not. If his phone records say he got a phone call from Nick Smith, you don't dispute that.
Not exactly, no.
Okay. And the whole idea was to send Kyle down to Car Source 3, the 63rd Street Car Source, because you guys had received a report that the people who were supposed to be protecting it had left, correct?
Yes.
And the property was being destroyed.
Yes.
You didn't know that Kyle had been separated from Mr. Balch at that point.
I did not.
So you tell him to go down there and protect that property because the cars are being bashed in, correct?
Yes.
It was either you or Nick Smith.
Yes.
And from where you were, you could see Kyle going down in that direction.
Yes.
And it wasn't the second he goes down there, you hear shots. He goes out of your view, there's a fairly lengthy period of time, You hear a gunshot, and then you hear a series of more gunshots, correct?
Yes.
And you, from where you were, could not see what happened to Kyle at the second incident, correct?
Yes.
Did not see.
I did not see.
And eventually, Kyle comes back in to your vision, correct?
Yes.
What did you observe Kyle doing as he approached? Well, let me ask you this. Where was he first?
Where I first saw him was kind of, against a tree line. It was more in front of the Ultimate gas station. And I saw him walking with his gun hanging down, and he had his hands up, and then I watched him walk up to a police car and then step away.
Okay.
And then
Describe what he's doing as he's going up to that police car.
I can't hear anything, but I could tell he was yelling.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was yelling.
Where
but,
were his hands?
In the air.
Okay. And you saw him walk up to the police car.
Yes.
You don't hear anything, but does Kyle stay and go up to the car? What's his next movement?
He walks up to the car, and very quickly he jumps back.
Okay, like somebody told him to get back?
Yeah.
Because he walked up there voluntarily, correct?
Yes.
And then he quickly steps back.
Yes.
And
I would ask here, what did you think Kyle was doing walking up to the car with his hands up?
he then makes his way back to car source number 2, correct?
Yes.
And he goes to that location. You guys meet up outside. You come down the ladder.
Yes, I come down the ladder. They had, by the time I got inside the building, he was already sitting in there.
Okay.
So they had to open the doors for him and let him in.
Okay. And you described him on August 25th, the morning of the 26th, I apologize, to Detective Antaramian as sweating like a pig. Do you remember using those words?
Yes.
White as a ghost?
Yes.
And hysterical.
Yes.
He told you he shot somebody?
Yes.
Told you he had to shoot somebody?
Yes.
With self-defense?
Yes.
Hadn't met with a lawyer, correct?
Correct.
Hadn't talked with anybody about his story. He's telling you right that day what happened.
Yes.
And you don't want to take him to the Kenosha Police Department, correct?
Yes.
Why not?
It's impossible.
You can't get to it,
Yeah,
correct?
you can't.
And if you guys walked up there with guns, you'd be a target, correct?
Yeah.
And you agree to go home to Kyle's residence, and he'll turn himself into the police there.
Yes.
And he did turn himself into the police.
Yes.
An hour and a half after you finally saw him at the car source, correct?
About that time, yes.
1:20 a.m. That's what the video shows. You don't dispute that.
No.
And you talk about discussions whether or not he should leave. That was his mother who was making those discussions, correct?
Yes.
Kyle wanted to turn himself in, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And he did.
Wow, that's key. The defense freaking made it sound like he was discussing and wanted to leave. That weasel, man, this defense attorney is a weasel. I hope the jury sees that.
Yes, he did.
Or not defense, the prosecution.
And eventually you were asked to come down to the police department, correct?
Yes.
And when you were asked to come down to the police department, you brought the guns.
No. The police had met us there at the apartment, and then they took them.
Okay. And then you drive then down to the police department.
Yes.
With Kyle's 2 sisters.
Yes. No. Yeah, I believe so.
And shortly after you get there, that's when that first interview happens with you, correct?
Yes.
And at that point...
See, had he took my advice and never talked to the police, he wouldn't be in this mess. All he had to do was say, I want a lawyer. I don't want to talk without a lawyer present. He wasn't being charged. He still has the right to the Fifth Amendment. He could have just said, I want a lawyer before I say anything, and he wouldn't have gave them any of this information about the gun. I bought it. I gave it to him. All this shit that he's facing 12 years in prison because he went down there voluntarily and talked to government. I've said it 1,000 times. Cooperating and helping government never helps you. Never. Not in the history of government has somebody came in, said, I committed a crime, I'm sorry, and they went, well, because you came in and told us, we're just going to let you go. It just doesn't happen.
You are worried about the fact that you had given Kyle the gun, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to your girlfriend, his sister, at the police department and asked about coming up with a story to protect you regarding the guns, correct?
I do not remember that.
If she said it happened, you would disagree, correct?
I would disagree.
Okay. And
I would have tried to refresh his recollection. It sounds like he has a statement or testimony from the sister that they talked about that. I would have read her testimony. Let me try to refresh her recollection. Would it surprise you if your sister said blah, 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 and she also said that you said blah, blah, blah? Would that surprise you? Does that refresh your recollection? I think he should have pushed that harder.
Detective Antaramian asking you a question on the morning of the 26th. So when did you first see the gun? You. About when we were getting into the car, when we walked outside the house. Detective Antaramian. Okay. Did you talk to him about it at all? No. I had a lot of stuff on my mind. Do you remember that exchange?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing bad had happened at that point, correct?
Correct.
So what did you have on your mind that was interfering with you saying, hey, Kyle, don't take the gun?
Kind of scared to go down there, not knowing what to expect.
Just, you wanted Kyle to have the gun, correct?
That wasn't really an opinion in my mind at all.
You wanted a gun.
Personally, for myself, yes.
You had no objection or voiced no objection to Kyle, your brother, having the gun, correct?
It wasn't a thought in my mind.
Nah, that doesn't make sense. I mean, if he was being honest, it'd be like, look, we're going down there as buddies. If I got a gun, he's got a gun. He can watch my back. I can watch his. Yeah, I was okay with him having a gun. For some reason, he doesn't want to say that.
He walks out of the house with an AR-15, and you don't say boo, correct?
I didn't say anything, correct?
And you have the ability to speak.
Yes.
If you wanted to object, you could have said something to Kyle, correct?
Yes, I could have.
And you didn't.
No.
Because you wanted him to have the gun for protection.
Not that reason exactly.
You wanted a gun for protection.
Yes.
Yeah, now he could have followed up more and said, do you think that him having a gun saved his life? Do you think if he wouldn't have had a gun that he could be dead? Didn't you say that you saw people burning things and throwing rocks and shooting guns in the air and destroying property? Isn't it reasonable that he was probably safer with a gun than without a gun? I'd have probably approached that a little bit more aggressively. I want this guy, I want to give him a way to say what he probably wants to say, but he can't volunteer because the prosecution will give him a shitty deal and go after him. Probably told him, don't volunteer nothing, don't go here. So you have to make it and drag it out of him to where he has no choice but to say it.
But that's what I knew of it. Basically, we go down there and we walk up, and it's coincidental. We walk up and there's Sam, and I'm like, oh, Sam, I just met you not long ago or whatever. And he gives Nick keys to the building and showed him where the ladder was, correct?
Yes.
You guys had permission to be there?
Yes.
He wanted you to protect his property?
Yes.
And he wanted protection at the 59th Street address and the 63rd Street address?
Yes.
And once you found out there wasn't any protection at the 63rd Street address, you sent Kyle down there, correct?
Yes.
Nick was acting like he was in control of everything, correct?
Yes.
And he was leading the people from the West Bend area who you didn't know, like he was even the owner of Car Source, correct?
Yes.
He wasn't, correct?
No.
Do you remember telling Detective Antaranian the only person I saw actually help people was Kyle?
Yes.
Because he was, correct?
Yes.
He might not have been a trained EMT, but he was providing first aid.
Yes.
And that big orange box in Exhibit 30 that I showed you, that was the stuff he brought from either his house or his employment, correct?
I'm not too sure where that came from, if I'm being honest.
The only person I saw actually help people was Kyle?
Yes.
Because he was, correct?
Yes.
He might not have been a trained EMT, but he was providing stuff he brought from either his house or his employment, correct?
I'm not too sure where that came from, if I'm being honest.
Water bottle, and then poof. Detective Antaranian, what hurt? Did the bottle hit you? You. No. It was actually, I was on the roof, but the wind was blowing towards me, so it was a bunch of just like a tear gas bomb. Just a bunch of smoke in the air. It came towards me, and my eyes started to burn. You remember that?
Yes.
So they were throwing gas bombs at you on the roof?
Yes.
There were gas bombs on the ground?
Yes.
No.
I would have went farther and said, is it reasonable if you would have been on the ground and a gas bomb would have hit you in the eyes and you couldn't see? Would it have been reasonable that somebody could have came up and took your gun or hit you in the back of the head, kind of like they hit Kyle in the head? I want to get in that Kyle was hit and attacked every chance I get to drive that home to the jury.
Well, do you remember talking to Detective Antaranian about somebody on the roof who was upsetting you because he was taking a laser pointer, not on a gun, but a laser pointer and pointing it at people?
Yes, I do remember.
Okay, that wasn't Kyle, correct? Because he was never on the roof.
Correct.
Now, who is that?
One of the people that came from out of town. He was about in mid-30s, I want to say mid-40s. He was on the...
Is he depicted in Exhibit 30?
I don't think I see him. No, I don't believe so.
That upset them?
Yes.
Because it was pointing them out?
Yes.
And it also upset them because they could have thought it was a weapon?
Yes.
And you told him to stop?
Yes.
And he just kept laughing about it?
Yes.
Antaranian, asking you on the 26th. Okay, anyone have inaudible? Kyle, he disappears out of view. You. Nick somehow finds out that there's nobody there, and there's people trying to break cars. And he tells Kyle and the other dude that he was on the
I know I'm at 34 minutes, but I think they're about finished, so I'm just going to let him finish out his testimony.
ground with to go over there. So did he tell him this in person or on the phone? Phone. Do you remember that?
It was on the phone.
But you're not sure who called?
Yes, I'm not sure.
You speaking. He was actually on the roof at that point. Nick kept on going up and down, up and down. He called Kyle. Before he called Kyle, he told me, like, there's nobody there. They're trying to set cars on fire. I was like, oh crap, oh crap. And he called Kyle, and he tells him, and then Kyle starts running, and he bolts for it. Do you remember telling the detective that?
Yes, no, I do.
And you stated you saw him run from the gas station, correct?
Yes.
Could you see the fire extinguisher in his hands?
Yes.
Because if you're on the roof of the car source number 2, you're like 1 block from 60, not 1 block, less than a half a block from 60th and Sheridan Road, correct?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
You had a clear line of sight directly to the ultimate gas station.
Yes.
Detective, I wouldn't say supposed to, but they were with each other the entire night. Every time Kyle left, so did he. So they were always together.
Yes.
And when they're going out to provide medical attention to people, they're going out with the buddy system. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's fair.
And when Kyle would go out and put out fires that were going on, he would go with somebody else, the buddy system, correct?
Yes.
There was a time where he left with the female, Joanne Fiedler, with the white helmet, and went and put out a fire by the church. Do you remember that?
I believe so.
Why did you think they needed a buddy system? Why do you think it was advantageous? Why did y'all establish this buddy system? Because it was dangerous. Because it was freaking violent. Because we knew that they were trying to burn stuff down, and if they saw us putting it out, they would become violent against us because they wanted to destroy, because they were bad people.
And you stated, so I figured they wanted to team up and go out and help people,
Yes.
telling the detective. This is Detective Antaramian questioning you on the 26th, asking you if you remember this. Okay, so then at some point you guys,
See, you can't, what the defense is trying to do is he's trying to get his statements that help Kyle in, because the defense didn't go over this statement. The prosecution, who questioned him first, didn't go over this. He didn't help Kyle. He only made this guy kind of like the enemy and had him say shit that helped the prosecution case. So this attorney is like, man, you said a whole bunch of shit to government that they didn't bring up, but he can't say that. So he's trying to say, do you remember this? Can I refresh your recollection? I'm going to read this. Since I can't get you to testify to it, I'm going to read it and ask you if that's correct. And that's how he's getting in all this good stuff.
I guess, and I'm not trying to make you look worse, but I want to make sure I'm factually accurate here. I mean, the fact that he buys a sling for his gun, it's likely he's going out to take it with him that night. Well, the intent was to buy a sling for me. Do you remember that exchange?
I do not.
About the sling and the timing of it, correct?
Yes. Really recall?
Do you remember the detectives wanting your telephone?
My phone?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe so.
Didn't they talk to you? And I'm reading from Detective Howard at that same interview. So we're just going to apply for a search warrant. But absolutely, as it's laid out in that form, you have the right to refuse. Dominick Black. Okay, so I'm not understanding as far as what I believe. I believe I'm going to be here for a while. Okay? And I've not talked to the authorities yet, so I don't know. Do you remember the discussion about that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and they wanted to download your phone, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And eventually, you said to them, fine, you can download my phone. I don't have anything to hide.
Yes.
Man, I would be trying to get all that stuff to repress. They would say, had we went and got a warrant, it would have been approved and we'd got it anyway, and would probably still get it in. But they coerced him into getting him his phone. We're going to go get a warrant. We're going to make you wait longer, or you can just tell us that we can download it. So I got nothing to hide. I'll let you download it. This guy gave all the prosecution the shit to now try to send him to jail for 12 years. Perfect. Keep talking to the police. They're your friends.
Now, that interview regarding the incident regarding your phone, and I'm sorry if I misled you, that was the November 6th incident, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and at that point, you were already under arrest.
Yes.
And the detective, both detectives interviewed you that night.
Yes.
And when you were in that interview, as it was wrapping up, they told you to have your lawyer, who was a different lawyer than Mr. Cotton at the time, reach out to Mr. Binger. He needed to talk to him about working something out.
Yes.
Okay. And from that day, they wanted you as a witness, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say from that day, no.
Okay. Your trial on your charges was set back in September, correct?
I don't exactly recall.
Let me ask it this way, not trying to trip you up on dates. Your trial on these charges, which Mr. Binger is prosecuting you for, was before today.
Yes.
Okay, about a month and a half ago?
Yes.
Okay. And you, your lawyer, and Mr. Binger walked into this courtroom and asked that the matter be set over until January of 2022.
Yes.
After you testified here today, correct?
Yes.
I would have followed up. And why do you think that happened? I mean, you should know why. Why do you think they continued this till after you testified? I would have got them to say more. Or tried, at least. Let them object.
August 25th, 2020. That gun that Kyle Rittenhouse possessed on the night in question had never left the state of Wisconsin, correct?
Correct.
And you guys had the gun, and you took it to Illinois so he could turn himself into the police.
Yes.
Okay. And you and Kyle did the taking off graffiti, correct?
Yes.
And that was in the late morning, right around lunchtime of the 25th, correct?
Correct.
And in that photograph is you, your stepfather, and your girlfriend, Mackenzie, correct?
Which photograph?
The photograph of... Is that in that one?
No, it'd be my brother, and then Kyle and Mackenzie.
Okay, so you are where?
That might have been when I left to go get, like, the sandpaper.
Okay. And Kyle's wearing the olive green shirt with his hat turned backwards?
Yes.
And who's that standing next to him?
Mackenzie?
Okay. And you guys had spent the night before at your dad's house, correct?
I'm not aware of where he slept. I don't really remember.
Could have slept at your house?
He could have.
Okay. And Mackenzie slept at your house that night?
I'm not aware. I can't remember.
Do you remember watching live streams of the riots?
No, I do not.
Did your dad talk to you about the riots and that's the reason he got the guns out?
He did previously that night, yes.
Do you remember him talking to you as you told the detectives that there was a plan to board up the windows if the rioters came?
Yes.
Okay. So all that was going on, you're aware of it?
Yes.
And when you guys are target shooting up north, there was nothing strange about that, correct?
No.
Kyle handled the gun appropriately?
Yes.
And he shot at those small little, you're saying clay pigeons?
Yes.
About 4 inches in diameter?
Yep.
You shot at the same things?
Yes.
Nothing out of the ordinary?
No.
I have nothing further, sir. Thank you.
I would have went a little bit further. Do you think Kyle's unsafe with a gun? No. Do you think Kyle is the type of guy that goes out looking for trouble when he is giving out free medical aid and covering up graffiti? No. Do you think when he wanted to turn himself in voluntary, do you think he was trying to hide and get out of something and thinking he did something wrong? No. Now, they would probably object. Your Honor, that calls for an opinion. But I would still getting those questions in front of a jury always helps because they kind of want to know the answer and are like, that makes sense. I'd like to know the answer. Why did that mean prosecutor object and shut this down? What doesn't that prosecutor? The more you get the prosecution objecting to what you're doing, the more the jury wonders, why is the prosecution trying to hide everything? Prosecutor, not prosecution. Let's see if he gets a
Pick up where that left off there. But you decided on the night of the 25th to leave home and go downtown to protect car source. Is that right?
Yes.
Why didn't you stay home? Protect your house.
The riots have been going on for a while. The house had been ready to be boarded up. All the guns have been out for, I want to say, ever since the riots started, and nothing happened. I felt that the house would be safe.
The timing of all this, if I understand you correctly, is on Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon, 4 o'clock or so, about is when you and the defendant take the guns from your house and come downtown.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yes.
You were somehow aware of stuff that had happened on Monday night and on Sunday night, right?
Yes.
That's part of the reason why you went downtown.
Yes.
But you decided at 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon there was no danger to your house that night?
I mean, I kind of figured, it's not just me that would be staying at the house. I have a lot of brothers that live there. It wasn't entirely my responsibility to make sure that the house was safe. I mean, I felt that it was safe. Nobody was going to harm the house. Nothing in the area had happened.
Okay. On this particular evening, when you're at the car source at 59th and you're up on the roof, where was Nick Smith during that evening?
He was up and down. So he was on the ground, he was on the roof, he was inside the building.
Did he ever have a gun that night?
I believe so. To the best of my memory, I think he did.
Do you remember if he had it the whole evening or just a short period of time?
I don't remember.
Is it fair to say that Nick Smith stayed at that location physically the whole night?
Yes.
And you did too?
Yes.
You've been asked by me, you've been asked by Attorney Richards, several variations of the same question, and I don't know that I think we've done some...
Don't comment on the witness's answer.
Who told the defendant to go to 63rd Street car source?
I'm not 100% certain.
At any point that evening, did you personally receive information from any other person that there were problems at the 63rd Street car source?
The only person I figured that out from was Nick Smith.
Do you know where he got that information?
I do not.
To your knowledge, did he physically ever go down to 63rd Street after you got 59th, when you finally got all set up? Did he ever leave later in the evening to go check and see what was happening at 63rd Street car source in person?
No.
You said at some point in the evening, someone up on the roof was using a laser pointer to aim at the crowd. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. So we're talking about something.
See, this right here, this attorney needs to, this kid's 18 years old. He doesn't know what courtroom demeanor and how the jury is doing this. He's a young kid. He's got three attorneys kind of taking up for him, telling him he's a good guy. Don't worry about it. We're going to help you. He kind of is relaxed and thinks these guys are friends and they're talking. But this facial behavior is turning off the jury, or could turn off the jury. And somebody needs to look at him, hold up a sheet of paper and go, dude, you got to look serious. We'll joke later. Don't be smiling in front of the jury.
Something like this, shining it on a person. Is that right?
Yes, but a lot bigger.
Okay. Was it your understanding that the people who had this pointed at him felt like that was a gun?
Yes.
Pointed at him? You're telling us that it wasn't actually a gun, but the people on the ground thought it was.
Yes.
And you were upset by that?
Yes.
Why?
Because he shouldn't be doing that. There's no reason for it. And it's drawing attention towards us.
Did you feel that it wasn't appropriate for anyone on the roof or on the ground to be pointing a gun at anyone?
No, I didn't really feel like that was necessary at all.
Maybe I misstated my question. Let me just make sure I'm clear on that. Would you agree with me that it was not appropriate for the members in your group to be pointing their guns at people?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, when I was asking you questions, that someone was throwing rocks. You said in response to Mr. Richards' questions that someone was throwing some sort of water bottle or gas bomb up on the roof. Is that right?
Yes.
When these folks were doing these things to you and the other members of your group, did you point a gun at anyone?
No.
Did you fire at anyone?
No.
Why not?
Because there's no need to. I mean,
did you feel that by these people throwing rocks at you or throwing a gas bomb at you, that you were in danger?
I mean, pain, yes, but not danger. I knew it wasn't going to kill me.
So you felt like it wasn't enough to use deadly force?
Correct.
I hope they cross and he comes back. Had you been on the ground and somebody throw a rock and hit you in the head, would you have felt then that your life was in danger and bodily injury? If 5 guys were chasing you and you were fighting off and they were trying to take your gun, would you felt then that you were in danger? See, this prosecutor made it look like you're safe up there. You didn't feel danger. They couldn't hurt you. You didn't shoot anybody. Of course not. He was up on a freaking area. They couldn't get to him and he didn't feel threatened. Kyle was on the ground getting attacked by a mob running for his freaking life. They were hitting him in the head with rocks and freaking throwing shit at him and hitting him with a skateboard and trying to take his gun. There is no comparison, and I would have made damn sure I got that from the... Hopefully he does. I don't know what happens.
You were... Have I ever put any words in your mouth?
No.
What was the #1 rule that I told you that I wanted from you when you testified?
Nothing but the truth.
Okay, this is called cleanup. Anytime the defense brings up there's a deal or whatever, the prosecution always comes back. And look, that's a standard deal. I can sit there and interview you as a witness, say, hey, man, you're going to get on the stand. Make sure and cover this. Make sure and cover this. Make sure if you're asked this, what's your answer going to be? Well, earlier you told me it was this. Tell me what you told me earlier. I can coach you through it all. And the last thing I say to you is, above all else, make sure you tell the truth when you're on the stand. Now, when I get you in front of the jury, guess what? I get to ask you, didn't I tell you to only tell the truth? Well, of course you did. After we did all our discussion and if and buts, what, and coconuts. So that's how the game is played, people.
Final question I have for you. Those slings, you were asked about how hard those slings were to attach to your body. And I forget, what did you say about that?
I don't truly remember.
Once they were attached to your body, did they hold that gun sort of dangling in front of you?
Yes.
Could we show that photograph of them? I think it's in the 30. What you just used? Okay. Yeah, I'll that's okay. I'm going to show you the other individuals at the 63rd Street holding that gun in the front portion of your body.
Yes.
Does the defendant have his sling on with his gun being held similar to you?
Yes.
Was that strong? Was that sling strong enough so that if someone tried to pull that gun away, the gun would be held to your body?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Okay, so that was a pretty good sneaky move by the prosecution. So he's going to imply that Kyle was never in danger of losing his gun because he had a sling. And that's not necessarily true. The sling will, hopefully the defense will come back and go, it's true that a sling will support the gun hanging, but that doesn't mean if somebody grabs it and starts yanking it from you that it can't be pulled off you or be used to throw you to the ground or swing you around and become a danger to you. Isn't that true also? Hopefully they get this. I don't know what he's going to say.
Can you redirect, or recross rather?
I would move Exhibit 30 into evidence.
Is there an objection? No. Received. You may step down, sir.
Oh, man, he didn't recross. I think he missed a few opportunities here. Let me bump through and see if this thing's over. Okay, it looks like it's over. Everybody's getting escorted out. Notice how everybody's smiling and friends and buddies after the jury leaves? All right. We'll end that there, and we'll pick up tomorrow on the next witness.